Her hands trembled as she held the eviction notice that wasn't even hers to pay. Tears streamed down her face as the man she thought was her rich, perfect boyfriend broke down before her, confessing that the cars, the dinners, the designer gifts, all of it, were lies. He wasn't rich. He wasn't successful. He was drowning in debt, and he had dragged her down with him. Before we continue with the full story, tell us which country you are watching from. Also hit the subscribe button so you will not miss our subsequent loving and heartwarming stories. This is a story about Maya, and how a regular Tuesday evening turned into something she thought was the answer to all her prayers. Maya was a smart, ambitious black woman in her mid-20s, and right now, she was tired. She had spent the last 8 hours at the Style Spot, a small but fancy clothing boutique in the city. Now, when we say fancy, we mean the kind of place where a silk scarf costs more than her monthly transit pass. She worked hard, too. She knew every garment, every customer, and every discount code. She was good at her job, but she felt like she was constantly chasing a life she could only afford to touch, never own. Every evening, after she locked up, she had the same routine. Put in her headphones, grab her cheap takeout coffee, and hustle to catch the express bus before the evening rush really hit. Her life wasn't glamorous. It was a grind. She was saving every penny to go back to school for business management. But that goal felt miles away, like trying to swim across the ocean with ankle weights on. She had dreams, big ones, not just of money, but of having the freedom that money buys, the freedom to help her mother, the freedom to travel, the freedom to stop clocking in and out for someone else. This particular Tuesday was crisp and cool, the kind of evening where the streetlights looked hazy in the city air. Maya was pulling the strap of her tote bag higher on her shoulder, already thinking about the microwave dinner waiting for her, when it happened. It was loud, fast, and completely out of place. A car door thumped open right beside the cab, startling her. It wasn't just any car. It was one of those sleek, black sports cars that look like they belong in a movie. The kind that makes you stop breathing for a second. A man stepped out, moving fast, talking into his phone. He was tall, and he was wearing a suit that didn't just look expensive, it looked tailored. You could tell that jacket had been cut for him and him alone. He wasn't looking where he was going, and Maya, trying to dart past, bumped straight into him. "Oh, I am so sorry," he exclaimed, his voice smooth like velvet. The bump wasn't hard, but it was enough. Maya's paper cup of coffee sloshed right down the front of his flawless, light gray suit jacket. She froze. Her heart went from 0 to 100 in a split second. "Oh my goodness, I'm so incredibly sorry. Let me." The man cut her off with an easy, charming laugh. He was a Daniel. That's what he looked like, a Daniel. Mid-30s, clean-cut, and a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He was white, with neat, dark hair and the kind of watch that cost more than her rent. Please, don't worry about it," Daniel said, waving a hand. He sounded more amused than angry. He ended his call quickly, slipping the phone into his pocket. "It's my fault. I was distracted, rushing from a meeting. I should have been looking." He reached out and gently took the paper cup from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and the connection was instant, a small, unexpected spark in the cool air. "This is inexcusable," Daniel continued, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Let me replace that for you. Actually, forget replacing it. Let me buy you a proper coffee, somewhere we can sit down. My treat. Consider it reparations for my terrible spatial awareness." Maya hesitated. Her bus was coming. Her dinner was waiting. Her responsible voice screamed, "Go home." But Daniel was standing there, radiating confidence and a kind of comfortable, effortless wealth she'd only ever seen from behind the boutique counter. He was the kind of man who didn't worry about coffee stains or bus schedules. He was the kind of man who changed the whole scenery just by stepping into it. "I really appreciate that, but I need to catch my bus," Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Daniel smiled wider, a smile that made her feel like she was the only person on this busy street. "A bus? Nonsense. Where are you headed? Let me drop you off. I'm already late for my next commitment, but I have 10 minutes to make up for my clumsiness." He gestured toward the sleek black car. The car was huge, quiet, and beautiful. I live in the North End, Maya admitted, feeling her cheeks flush. It felt silly to mention her neighborhood to a man who probably had a view of the whole city. Daniel opened the passenger door with a sweep of his hand. Hop in, Maya. She paused. Wait, how did you know my name? He chuckled, leaning against the door frame. You dropped this. He held up a small, professional ID badge for the style spot that she wore on a lanyard. Maya, right? It's a beautiful name. Now, let's get you out of this cold. Against her better judgment, she got in. The leather seats felt like butter. The interior smelled expensive, like new money and high-end cologne. It was the complete opposite of her sticky city bus seat. As they drove through the darkening city, Daniel's conversation was effortlessly charming. He didn't ask her a million questions. He just talked naturally, dropping little clues about his life. I was just wrapping up a tough negotiation, he explained, navigating the traffic with one relaxed hand. We're finalizing the lease on a new space downtown. You know how those business meetings are. Endless paperwork. He kept it vague, which somehow made it more intriguing. He mentioned how much he missed his peace and quiet after a long day, adding, That's why I love my penthouse. The silence up there is absolute bliss. He made it sound like having a penthouse was as common as having a couch. Maya felt her heart beat faster. She had always been practical, always realistic, but sitting next to him, she felt a powerful pull towards the life he represented. This wasn't just a coffee replacement. This felt like an open door. The 10 minutes went by in a flash. He pulled up to the corner near her apartment building, slowing the beautiful car down so it barely made a sound. Well, thank you for the ride, Daniel, Maya said, her voice sounding lighter than usual. The pleasure was all mine, Maya, he said, turning to her, his smile gentle. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a clean white business card. Hey, my number. Call me. I owe you a proper dinner, and I need to make sure this suit is salvageable. She took the card. It was thick, slightly textured, and simply read, Daniel K. Investments. No company logo, no silly title, just his name and a number. It screamed power. As she stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold air hit her, but she barely noticed it. She watched as the black sports car silently pulled away and disappeared around the corner. Holding that card, feeling the heavy paper between her fingers, Maya suddenly felt like she wasn't standing on the cold concrete of her neighborhood anymore. She felt like she was standing right on the edge of a new beginning. She felt a surge of hope, a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee she'd spilled. Maybe, just maybe, her prayers had been answered not with a raise or a scholarship, but with a chance encounter. A door had opened, and a charismatic man in an expensive suit was holding it for her. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like the glamorous life she'd only dreamed of was finally within reach. She didn't wait long to call him. The card felt too hot in her hand to ignore. Daniel, of course, was delighted to hear from her. And his next move wasn't a casual coffee. It was a full-on event. He invited her to dinner at the Regent's table, a place in the city where reservations had to be made weeks in advance and the menu prices were spoken in hushed tones. Maya spent half a week's pay on a dress she swore she'd wear again. But it wasn't just the dress, it was the entire ritual. The curling iron, the makeup, the last-minute panic over whether she was wearing too much jewelry or not enough. She wasn't just getting ready for a date. She was preparing for a job interview for the life she wanted. Daniel arrived exactly on time, not in the sports car this time, but in a driver-driven black sedan. That small detail, a driver, told Maya everything. He didn't even have to drive himself. He had people for that. The Regent's table was everything Maya had imagined. Crystal glasses, hushed waiters moving like ghosts, and the smell of money and expensive food hanging in the air. The hostess greeted Daniel by name, not just casually, but with genuine respect. They hadn't even looked at the menu before Daniel was signaling the waiter. We'll start with a view of Clickwhat, the '08, he said smoothly, barely glancing at the waiter who was already nodding. Champagne. The good stuff. Maya had never had champagne that wasn't poured at a wedding toast. You look stunning, Maya, Daniel said, leaning forward once they were alone, resting his elbow on the white tablecloth. "You belong here." That simple phrase, "you belong here," did more for Maya than any compliment about her dress. It was an endorsement of her dream. Throughout the meal, Daniel was the perfect host. He was funny, engaged, and treated her like she was the most fascinating person in the room. When the food arrived, something complicated involving scallops and saffron, he talked about his investments. "It's just long hours and calculated risks, Maya," he said, taking a sip of the champagne. "You have to know when to hold M and when to fold M. It's all about leverage." He kept his business details vague, like he was talking about highly classified information. He mentioned closing a deal in London and another meeting scheduled in the Cayman Islands. He made the world sound small and accessible, just waiting for him to step in. When the bill came, Maya watched, mesmerized, as he pulled out a thick card, not a debit card, but a sleek, heavy black credit card, and handed it over. And when the waiter returned, Daniel didn't just sign. He scrawled an enormous tip onto the slip, not even flinching at the total. "Got to take care of the people who take care of you," he murmured to Maya, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But before she stepped into this shimmering bubble, Maya had to face a small dose of reality. Her friend Ethan. Ethan had been Maya's best friend since primary school. They grew up in the same neighborhood, shared bus rides, and he knew all of her struggles and all of her dreams. He was a solid guy, working hard as an electrician, always on time, always reliable. He loved Maya, quietly and steadily, but he'd never found the right time or the right words to tell her. He happened to be walking past her apartment building just as Daniel's driven sedan pulled up to collect her. Ethan saw the whole thing, the fancy car, the expensive clothes, and the way Maya lit up when Daniel stepped out. Later that evening, while Maya was still on her date, Ethan sent her a text, trying to keep it light. She didn't respond. He tried again the next morning. Finally, the day after the date, Ethan caught her on her lunch break, grabbing a sandwich a block from the boutique. "You've been ignoring me," Ethan said, his arms crossed, a work glove still tucked into his back pocket. He looked tired but concerned. He looked real. "I've been busy, Ethan," Maya replied, holding her coffee tight. She was still riding the high of the night before, and Ethan's grounded presence felt like a wet blanket. "Busy with Daniel, I guess," he said, his voice flat. "Look, I'm just saying be careful. I saw his car. I saw the suit. You don't know anything about him." Maya sighed, irritated. She hated the way he made Daniel sound like a fairy tale villain. "I know enough," she snapped. "I know he treats me like I'm matter, and he can afford to take me to a place where I don't have to count quarters for a tip." Ethan stepped closer, his brow furrowed with genuine worry. "Maya, I'm serious. Money is just paper. It doesn't tell you who a man is. What does he actually do? What's his company? Where does he live? I mean, really live?" "He's an investor, Ethan. He lives in a penthouse." "Why are you grilling me like this?" she said, her voice rising. Then she leaned in, her eyes hard. "You're just jealous. You don't want to see me happy, and you don't want me to have a chance to get out of this routine." That accusation hung in the air like smoke. It was cruel, and it was unfair, but in Maya's mind, it felt true. She was choosing hope, and he was choosing doubt. Ethan just stared at her, the hurt visible in his eyes. He shook his head slowly. "You know that's not fair, Maya. I just don't want you to trade one dream for another person's empty promise." He knew he couldn't win this argument, not while Maya was so dazzled. He turned, defeated, and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone, clutching her sandwich. She watched his sturdy, familiar back disappear down the street. This is a crossroads moment for Maya. She has to choose between the comfortable, dependable reality that Ethan represents and the thrilling, uncertain promise of Daniel's world. Later that evening, Maya was sitting in her small living room, staring at the thick business card again. The memory of the champagne bubbles and Daniel's confident smile was still warm inside her. The guilt over hurting Ethan was a small, cold spot, but it was quickly overshadowed by the exciting rush of her potential future. She realized what had happened. She had chosen to believe in the dream. She had chosen the dazzling light over the shadow of doubt. She picked up her phone and texted Daniel, "Thank you for an incredible night." His response was immediate, "I can't wait to see you again. You are absolutely worth the investment." Maya smiled, a wide, genuine smile that hadn't reached her eyes in years. She pushed all thoughts of Ethan's warnings aside. Daniel saw her, truly saw her potential, and that feeling, that sense of being chosen for a life of glamour and ease, was the most intoxicating attraction of all. For the first time, she felt like her hard work was finally about to pay off, not because of a raise, but because she had captured the attention of a man who could simply hand her the world. We've seen Maya choose the dazzling world of Daniel over the cautious words of her friend, Ethan. Well, over the next few weeks, Daniel proved her right, at least in her own mind. He didn't just date her, he curated her. The first gift was a small, glittering necklace. The kind you don't wear to the boutique, the kind you wear to an awards show. Then came the clothes. Daniel took her shopping on a Saturday, not to the regular mall, but to the kind of department store where the salespeople wear gloves and bring you champagne while you try things on. He didn't blink at the price tags. "Pick what you love, Maya," he'd say, leaning back in the plush chair. "You have excellent taste. You deserve to wear it." She walked out with bags filled with designer names, Chanel, Gucci, whatever was trending with a wealthy crowd. Then came the trips. Surprise weekend getaways. One week it was a charming little spot upstate, tucked away by a quiet lake, where the linens smelled like lavender and money. The next, it was a high-rise hotel suite overlooking the ocean. Daniel would charter a small plane or arrange for an incredible car service. Everything was flawless, effortless, and unbelievably quick. This kind of life, the kind where beautiful things just appear, it changes a person. It certainly changed Maya. Maya's social media feed became a highlight reel of luxury. She had always kept her Instagram private, sharing only the usual pictures of takeout and blurry sunsets. Now, it was a curated gallery. A close-up shot of her wrist, showing a new slim, gold bangle next to Daniel's expensive watch, captioned, "Weekend Views." A picture of her, laughing, in a stunning new dress, standing next to a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce. Date night with the best. A selfie from inside a sleek jet cabin, sunglasses on. Next stop, relaxation. Her followers exploded. She started getting comments like, "You won the lottery. And how did you do it, girl?" People she hadn't talked to since high school were sliding into her DMs, asking for advice. Maya's shoulders straightened. Her laugh got louder. She started walking with a new confidence that bordered on arrogance. She quit her job at the boutique. Why fold other people's expensive clothes when you could be wearing your own? She was chosen. She was validated. And the envy of the internet felt like a validation all its own. She didn't feel like the girl on the bus anymore. She felt like a boss running her own life, even though Daniel was paying the bill for all of it. But not everyone was ready to toast her success. Lila was Maya's best friend, the kind of friend who would tell you if you had spinach in your teeth or if you were making a catastrophic life decision. Lila was pragmatic. She worked in finance, paid her bills on time, and knew that things that sound too good to be true usually are. Lila and Maya met for brunch one Saturday, and Maya showed up late, carrying a new designer handbag that was completely impractical for everyday life. "Look, the bag is gorgeous, Maya," Lila started, stirring her coffee. "You look great, you really do. But we have to talk about Daniel." "What about him?" Maya said, a defensive tone creeping into her voice. "He's amazing. He's kind, he's generous, and he just booked us a trip to Barbados in December." Lila sighed, leaning forward. "That's the thing, Maya. He's too perfect, too polished. Every time you ask him a real question about his business, he says leverage and investments and changes the subject. I've never seen him actually work. He just spends." Maya rolled her eyes, pulling out her phone to check her notifications. "Lila, you sound like Ethan now. Are you two swapping notes on how to be cynical?" "No, I'm being a friend," Lila insisted, lowering her voice. "Think about it. Where's his office? You've been dating for weeks. Have you ever been to his penthouse? Or is he always picking you up downstairs?" That question hit Maya. She paused, putting her phone down. Lila was right. Daniel always picked her up either at her place or neutral location. She'd seen the car, but she'd never been inside his home. She'd asked, of course, but he always had a smooth answer. "It's just getting repainted," he'd said once, charmingly. "I want it to be perfect for when you finally see it, Maya." Maya shook the doubt away immediately. She wasn't going to let Lila's skepticism ruin her high. "His private, Lila," Maya argued, crossing her arms. "Wealthy people are like that. He doesn't want me in his home yet because he's still figuring out if I'm serious. He's testing me." "Or," Lila said quietly, "he doesn't want you to see the reality of his life. It just feels fishy, Maya. He seems disconnected from the real world. Like a character from a movie, not a man with a real job." That was the core of it, too perfect. The gifts were too easy, the life too glamorous, the flow of money too relentless. Maya paid for her brunch, not with Daniel's card, but with her own new, beautiful credit card, which Daniel had insisted on getting her for emergencies. She felt a sharp pride in using it. It felt like she was a part of his world now. "You worry too much, Lila," Maya said, giving her friend a quick, slightly dismissive hug. "This is it. This is my chance. I'm not going to let a little paranoia stop me from finally living the life I deserve." As she walked away, heading toward the car service Daniel had sent, she felt a powerful sense of victory. She had the clothes, the jewelry, the admiring followers, and the handsome, generous man. She was living proof that dreams come true. She ignored the twinge of sadness over pushing away another good friend. She had chosen the life she always wanted, and right now, sitting in the back of a luxury car, scrolling through comments from strangers who wished they were her, Maya felt untouchable. Daniel was waiting for her, with another surprise trip, another breathtaking gesture. She felt like the heroine of her own amazing story, and nothing, not even the cautious words of her friends, was going to pull her back down to earth. This is Maya's peak. But what happens when you climb that high and the ground starts to feel unstable? The truth about Daniel is much, much darker than Maya could ever imagine, and you won't want to miss the massive twist. Click the subscribe button and the bell so you are the first to know the shocking reality in the next chapter. We last saw Maya living on a cloud of designer clothes and exotic trips, happily ignoring the warnings from her friends, Ethan and Lila. For weeks, that cloud held strong. Daniel was the perfect, generous boyfriend, and Maya was finally the woman she was always meant to be. But every fairy tale has a moment where the magic flickers. It happened one Friday night at a French restaurant called Le Fleur. It was the kind of place so exclusive it didn't even have a sign, just a discreet, heavy door and a velvet rope. Everything was flawless, from the tiny flowers on the table to the silver cloche that covered the main course. They had finished a beautiful, expensive meal. Daniel had been entertaining Maya all night with a funny story about a disastrous golf trip to Scotland. When the bill arrived, he didn't even glance at it. He simply handed his wallet over to the waiter. The waiter, a stiff man in a bow tie, took the card and went to the back counter. Everything was quiet for a moment. Daniel and Maya were talking about a trip to the vineyard they had planned for the following weekend. Then the waiter returned. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, holding the credit card out, his face frozen in a look of polite discomfort. "Sir," he murmured, his voice low, "I'm sorry, but this card has been declined." The air in the restaurant suddenly felt heavy and thin. The silence, which had been sophisticated, was now intensely awkward. Maya froze. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't supposed to happen, hey. This was a man who owned a penthouse and chartered planes. Daniel, however, didn't even stop smiling. "Ah, the banks," he said, waving a hand with casual irritation. "You know how it is, Maya. They always flag large expenditures when I travel. Silly security protocols." He reached back into his wallet, which was thick and supple, and pulled out a different card, another heavy, black piece of plastic. The first card was swiftly tucked away, hidden from view. "Try this one," Daniel told the waiter. "It's a different account. That'll sort it." The waiter hurried away, and this time, the transaction went through without a hitch. Daniel laughed, A light, easy sound. See? Nothing to worry about, he said to Maya, taking a large sip of water. I told you, just a bank issue. You can't trust technology these days. Maya smiled back, nodding quickly, trying to act like this was perfectly normal. But inside, she felt a cold knot tightening in her chest. A tiny, annoying voice whispered, "Rich men don't get declined at restaurants like this. They just don't." Daniel signed the receipt, wrote the generous tip, and they walked out of LaFleur and back into the cool city night. He was still joking about the bank's silly system, but the moment had already planted that seed of doubt in Maya's mind. And once a seed of doubt is planted, it starts to look for water. Over the next few dates, Maya started to pay attention to the little things she had ignored before. She realized they never spent the night together at his place. In fact, she had never even been past the front door of his building. "When can I finally see the famous penthouse, Daniel?" she asked one night, after he'd dropped her off at her place for the 10th time. He put his hand over hers, giving her his signature charming, slightly regretful look. "Soon, sweetheart. I promise. But the builders are still in there making noise. It's impossible. They're doing custom Venetian plaster in the living area, and I won't have your first time there be a construction site. It's been under renovation for months," Maya said, trying to keep her tone light, but her curiosity was genuine. "Luxury takes time, my love," he replied, giving her a quick kiss. "Besides, I like picking you up and spoiling you. It's our routine." And that was it. Case closed. He was so smooth, so quick, that Maya felt silly for even asking. She thought back to Lila's warning. "Have you ever been to his penthouse?" She thought of Ethan's frustration. What does he actually do? And the routine was always the same. Daniel would pick her up in the sleek car. They would go to a dazzling neutral location, a high-end club, a fancy restaurant, an exclusive party, and then he would drop her off at her place. They were always on display, but always on his terms. His life was a series of expensive public moments, with no private downtime at home. Maya tried to rationalize it. Maybe rich men were just private. Maybe they did have multiple credit cards for different issues. Maybe a penthouse renovation did take 6 months. She was moving in a world she didn't understand. So maybe these oddities were just rich man quirks. But the nagging little details kept stacking up. His phone was always kept face down on the table. He never took work calls when she was around. And now, the embarrassing moment of the declined card. There's a pattern emerging here that Maya is desperate to ignore. She's clinging to the expensive gifts and the glamorous image, but the truth is trying to peek through the cracks. The next day, Maya wore the beautiful gold bangle Daniel had given her. It glittered under the fluorescent light of the grocery store where she was picking up dinner. She looked down at it, then up at her reflection in the glass of the refrigerator case. She looked like a woman who was winning. She closed her eyes briefly, pushing the memory of the awkward waiter and the declined card far away. She couldn't give in to the doubt now. That would mean giving up on the life she was holding in her hands, and admitting that Ethan and Lila were right. He's just private. He's just eccentric. Rich men have their quirks. She whispered the words to herself like a comforting mantra. She chose to believe Daniel's confident smile and his easy explanations over the cold, hard facts. She had sacrificed her common sense for this lifestyle, and she wasn't ready to let it go. For Maya, the dream was still too beautiful to surrender to mere paranoia, and the promise of that penthouse tour was enough to keep her focused on the fabulous life she believed was just around the corner. The truth is finally closing in, and the next moment Maya sees will shatter the luxurious world Daniel built around her. We left Maya assuring herself that Daniel's quirks, the declined card, the phantom penthouse renovation, were just the price of admission to a glamorous life. She chose to believe the dream. Well, her belief was about to be severely tested. Daniel decided it was time to introduce Maya to his widest social circle. He was taking her to a massive rooftop party downtown, the kind of event held in a penthouse building where the air conditioning is too strong and the views cost more than a small home. The energy was electric. Maya stepped out of the elevator and felt the city noise fall away, replaced by the thumping house music and the low, confident buzz of conversation. The view was breathtaking, thousands of city lights twinkling beneath them like scattered diamonds. Everyone looked like a model in a magazine. The women were stunning, dressed in clothes that looked deceptively simple, but Maya knew were wildly expensive. She was wearing a stunning scarlet dress Daniel had bought her, and for the first hour, she felt like she belonged. She held Daniel's arm, sipping a pale pink drink, basking in the glow of the exclusive crowd. She felt superior to the person she was just a few weeks ago, folding scarves in the boutique. If you've ever had a moment where you felt completely out of your depth, surrounded by people who spoke a different language, the language of inherited wealth, you know that mixture of awe and panic. That's where Maya was. Daniel, ever the smooth host, guided her through the crowd. There's Marcus, he'd murmur, he owns 3 tech startups. And that's Chloe, her family shipping empire is massive. Maya was nodding, trying to look comfortable, when Daniel led her to a cluster of people gathered near the railing, all laughing a little too loudly. Everyone, allow me to introduce you, Daniel announced, pulling Maya closer. This is Maya. She's been keeping me sane lately. The smiles were polite, maybe even a little cold. Then, a woman turned around. This was Sabrina. She was effortlessly beautiful, with long, dark hair and an ice blue silk dress that looked poured onto her body. She had the kind of casual confidence that comes from never having worried about money for a single day in her life. She looked Maya up and down slowly, deliberately, her gaze lingering on Maya's dress and her smile. Maya, Daniel repeated, giving her a little squeeze on the shoulder. This is Sabrina. We've known each other forever. Sabrina didn't extend her hand. She just smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said one word that cut through the music and the buzz of the party like a whip. Oh, she drawled, tilting her head. You're his girlfriend? Cute. It wasn't a compliment. It was condescending, dismissive, and utterly humiliating. She made the word girlfriend sound like passing amusement or temporary accessory. The small group around them chuckled, a tight, polite sound that made Maya's cheeks burn with shame. Sabrina, don't be ridiculous, Daniel interjected, a small, forced laugh in his voice. We're not doing this tonight. Sabrina just took a sip of her cocktail, her eyes still locked on Maya. Darling, I'm just saying. We all know Daniel has a type. She's lovely, for now. It was a clear, public slap in the face. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. She wasn't just embarrassed. She felt exposed, like the cheap label on her designer purse had suddenly been revealed. She felt the scrutiny of every eye, and in that instant, she understood exactly where she stood, outside the velvet rope of Daniel's real world. Daniel quickly pulled Maya away, steering her toward the bar. Don't worry about her, he said dismissively, signaling the bartender for another drink. Sabrina's always been petty. She's just being Sabrina. She's a spoiled princess who thinks she owns the city. What was that? Maya asked, her voice low and tight. Did you hear how she talked to me? She made me feel like you don't belong. Daniel finished for her, his tone light. Maya, don't let her get to you. She's jealous. She doesn't like that I'm spending time with someone who has ambition and drive, instead of just a trust fund. His words were supposed to be comforting, but they fell flat. Maya felt a terrifying clarity wash over her. Daniel hadn't defended her. He had simply explained away the insult. And why did everyone else in that circle find it so funny? Lila's warning echoed in her mind. His too polished. Ethan's concern. What does he actually do? They weren't warning her about his finances. They were warning her about his character and the superficial, often cruel, world he inhabited. Maya realized that every expensive gift, every luxurious trip, was just a uniform. She had spent all this time trying to look the part, and yet the real insiders could spot the fraud in a single glance. The humiliation of that moment was profound. Maya didn't run. She looked across the rooftop, past the glowing city, and back at the group that had laughed at her. She saw Sabrina, still poised, still perfect. A quiet rage began to burn in Maya's heart. She suddenly understood that those people were the gatekeepers, and they had just slammed the door in her face. But Maya wasn't a quitter. She had fought her way off the bus, fought her way out of poverty, and she was not going to let a spoiled woman in a silk dress tell her where she belongs. She took Daniel's arm again, squeezing it hard. "You're right," Maya said, her voice completely steady now, the shame replaced by steel. "She is just being jealous. I won't let her run me off." She looked up at Daniel, and this time, her eyes held a fierce determination that surprised even him. The seed of doubt about Daniel's finances was still there, but now, it was secondary. The primary goal had shifted. She had to prove to Sabrina, to Daniel's entire circle, and most importantly, to herself, that she belonged here. The cost no longer mattered. She was doubling down on Daniel's world, not for the money, but for the validation. She was going to stay, and she was going to win. Maya lifted her chin and walked with Daniel back toward the group, her face a mask of poise and conviction. The feeling of being scorned didn't push her away. It locked her in, forging a fierce, new determination to conquer this glamorous, but dangerous, new world. Maya was still riding the high of the rooftop party, even though the humiliation from Sabrina had been a nasty shock. Instead of questioning Daniel, she doubled down on her choice. She decided the best way to prove she belonged was to show off her success to the people who mattered most, her family. She went to her mother's small, cozy apartment for dinner, bringing a bottle of wine Daniel had gifted her, a bottle that probably cost more than her mother's weekly grocery budget. Her mother, let's call her Auntie Carol, was a steady, wise woman. She was the backbone of their family, a woman who had worked 2 jobs her entire life and knew the difference between shiny paint and solid wood. Maya proudly told her mother about Daniel. She described the trips, the designer clothes, and the amazing future he was promising. She showed off the latest ring Daniel had given her. It wasn't an engagement ring, but it was big enough to feel like a promise. Auntie Carol smiled politely as she served up the simple, comforting food. She listened patiently to the whole dazzling narrative. But when Maya was finished, her mother looked right into her eyes, and her question cut through the glamour like a dull knife. "That's wonderful, baby," Auntie Carol said, calmly stirring her tea. "But let me ask you one thing, Maya. You talk a lot about his money and his gifts. But does he respect you? Does he love you? Is he kind when you're not wearing one of those fancy dresses?" Maya's smile faltered. "Of course, he does, Mom. He treats me like a queen. Is giving me the life I deserve. You just don't understand this world." Auntie Carol shook her head gently. "Honey, I understand a world. The world where a good man is more important than a thick wallet. Money is a tool, not a measure of character. If he's buying you things, but he won't even introduce you to his people, what is he buying? He's buying your silence. He's buying your attention. Money isn't everything, Maya. Does he truly see you?" Maya got instantly defensive. She hated that her mother couldn't just be proud of her. "He does see me. You just want me to date someone like Ethan," Maya scoffed, throwing her hands up. "Someone struggling, someone grounded. I've lived the struggle, Mom. I want the ground to be marble for once." Auntie Carol saw the hardening in Maya's eyes and decided not to push. She knew her daughter was too deep in the fantasy to listen right now. But the quiet disapproval hung heavy in the air, spoiling the luxurious taste of the expensive wine. The next day, the tension continued when Ethan showed up unannounced at Maya's apartment. He looked determined, not sad or jealous, just absolutely resolute. He had heard about the latest round of gifts and the trip planned for Barbados. He knew he had to try one last time. "Look, I know you think I'm bitter," Ethan began, standing in her doorway. "And maybe a little part of me is. But right now, I'm here as the friend who knows your tired walk, Maya. And that woman I saw at the boutique, she's gone. You're wearing a mask Daniel bought you." Maya leaned against the doorframe, wearing one of her new designer robes, a luxury she hadn't needed before Daniel. She felt powerful, and she used that power against him. "You don't get to tell me who I am, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with ice. "You lost your chance to be relevant." Ethan ignored the insult and went straight for the facts. "I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about him. You told me he's an investor, right? Where are the business headlines? Where is his family? Rich people are always flashing their pedigree. He never even mentions a brother or a cousin. And you told me he refuses to introduce you to anyone important to him. His private. Maya insisted, louder this time. And his family is scattered all over the place. Lila said you asked him about his penthouse again. Ethan pressed. What was the excuse this time? New marble? New plumbing? Maya clenched her jaw. She hated that Lila and Ethan were talking about her behind her back. It's a custom renovation, Ethan. It takes time when you're rich and busy. You wouldn't understand. You're not in that tax bracket. Ethan took a slow, deep breath, his eyes filled with genuine, heartbreaking pain. He saw that she was building a fortress of lies and luxury around herself. This isn't about money, Maya. It's about honesty, Ethan said, his voice low and defeated. He is hiding something major. And you are so desperate for that life that you're willing to ignore every single red flag, every warning from the people who actually care about you, not your dress size. Then, Maya reached for the most hurtful weapon she had. She looked at his honest, worried face, and she stabbed him with the truth he had tried to keep hidden. You're not worried about me, Ethan. You're just bitter because you thought I'd finally choose you, the good, struggling guy. But I chose the successful one. You're jealous because you didn't win. The accusation was brutal. Ethan staggered back a step, the color draining from his face. It was true, of course, that he loved her. But his love was also why he was standing there, fighting for her. Ethan didn't say another word. He just stood there for a long, silent moment, looking at the stranger wearing Maya's face. He knew the fight was over. He turned and walked away, the sound of his sensible work boots receding down the hallway. He left not in anger, but in the profound sadness of realizing the woman he loved was completely lost. Maya stood in the doorway, the designer robe feeling heavy and stiff. The victory of making Ethan leave was immediately soured by the emptiness of the apartment. She was alone again, surrounded by expensive, beautiful things that suddenly felt cold. Her mother's questions and Ethan's heartbroken exit left a new, painful emptiness. But instead of letting that pain make her pause, Maya hardened her resolve. She told herself that Ethan was just a distraction, and her mother was old-fashioned. She was determined to prove them wrong by making Daniel's fantasy her reality, no matter the cost. She chose the promise of luxury over the pain of facing the truth. But the love of a mother and a true friend doesn't just disappear. Even though Maya pushed them away, the unwavering, honest love that Ethan and Auntie Carol offered was still out there, waiting for the moment when she would finally need it. That unconditional care, even rejected, remained her strongest anchor. Maya is now completely isolated in Daniel's glittering cage. The truth is about to come crashing down in a way she never expected. After that awful argument with Ethan, where Maya had thrown his love back in his face, things were quiet at home. Too quiet. Maya was living her high life, of course. She was still going on amazing dates with Daniel, still wearing the beautiful jewelry, and still accepting the constant flow of gifts. But the fun wasn't as bright as it used to be. The questions from her mother, and the look on Ethan's face when he walked away, had put tiny cracks in her gilded cage. Her days started to revolve around Daniel's vague schedule. When will he call? Will he take me out tonight? Where will the car pick me up? She had quit her job, so she spent a lot of time alone, waiting in her apartment. The beautiful, designer clothes hung in the closet, waiting for Daniel to turn on the lights so she could wear them. The luxury felt less like a gift and more like a tether. Meanwhile, the man Maya had dismissed as too ordinary was quietly building his own world. Ethan had been hurt, deeply, by Maya's cruelty. But instead of letting that pain crush him, he turned it into fuel. He stopped focusing on Maya and started focusing on the only person he could truly change, himself. He doubled down at work. Ethan wasn't just a regular electrician. He was smart, reliable, and knew how to lead a team. He took extra classes at night, proved his worth on the job site, and within weeks of his fight with Maya, he landed a big promotion. He was now a site manager, a real title with real responsibility and a paycheck that reflected it. This wasn't Daniel's phantom investments. This was a man with dirt under his fingernails and actual blueprints on his desk. This was earned success. With his new income, Ethan did something practical. He traded in his old, reliable truck for a newer model, a sharp, clean sedan. Not a sports car, but a professional car that looked solid, dependable, and capable of holding a family. He also started dressing sharper. Nothing flashy, but his clothes fit better. His work shirts were crisp, and when he wasn't on the job, he wore dark jeans and tailored jackets. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about respecting his own progress. The change in Ethan wasn't just external. He carried himself differently. He walked with a quiet, powerful confidence. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by the calm focus of a man who knows his value and is steadily moving forward. It was early one afternoon when the inevitable happened. Maya was walking to the corner store, wearing sunglasses and a slightly frayed pair of comfortable leggings, her waiting clothes. She was waiting at the traffic light, thinking about how Daniel hadn't called all day, when a car slowed to make a turn. It was a new sedan, and behind the wheel was Ethan. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't seen him properly in weeks. He was wearing a navy blue blazer over a crisp white shirt, and he looked incredible. Not in a flashy, expensive way, but in a put-together, mature, completely self-possessed way. He looked like a man who knew exactly where he was going. He pulled the car through the turn and stopped right beside the curb, waiting for the light to change. He looked over, and his eyes met hers. For a split second, all the history, all the arguments, and all the hurt were right there between them. Ethan nodded. It wasn't a sad nod or an angry nod. It was a simple, confident acknowledgement. I see you. I'm doing fine. Maya, still clinging to her pride, turned her head quickly, pretending she hadn't seen him, pretending she was looking at something fascinating across the street. But inside, her stomach was doing painful somersaults. The light changed. Ethan drove off, the new car humming smoothly. As she walked toward the store, Maya felt a sharp, bitter pang of regret. She had always dismissed Ethan as too ordinary. But standing there, watching him drive away in his new, solid car, heading off to his real, thriving job, she realized the devastating truth. Ethan wasn't ordinary. He was genuine. He was dependable, stable, and his success was something he had built with his own two hands. Compared to Daniel, who only had vague titles and declined credit cards, Ethan suddenly looked like the most valuable man she had ever known. She had been chasing smoke and diamonds while rejecting gold. Maya grabbed her groceries, her mind completely focused on the image of Ethan. She was still defensive. He's a site manager. Daniel is an investor. Daniel is on a different level. She tried to tell herself that, but the words felt hollow and thin against the weight of Ethan's quiet success. The truth was, Daniel's world was exciting but stressful. Ethan's world looked solid and peaceful, and the peace that came from real, earned stability was suddenly more attractive than any expensive ring. But her pride, that fierce, blinding pride that she had cultivated since the first time Daniel's car had pulled up, wouldn't let her back down now. She had burned too many bridges with her mother and Ethan. She couldn't admit she was wrong. Not yet. As Maya walked back to her lonely, quiet apartment, she carried not just her groceries, but the undeniable, heavy weight of regret. Yet, the sight of Ethan's genuine stability, his quiet success, served as a painful, necessary reminder that real value doesn't need to shout to be heard. And deep down, that flash of clarity was the first true sign that Maya's long sleepwalk through the fantasy was starting to end. The honest life she'd thrown away was now shining brighter than the luxury she'd chosen. Maya had spent weeks convincing herself that Daniel's quirks were just the eccentricities of the ultra-rich. But the image of Ethan's steady, honest success was a constant, nagging reminder that stability didn't need a glamorous backstory. The doubts, once tiny seeds, had grown into a massive, thorny bush in her mind. She finally reached her limit. She was tired of waiting, tired of the excuses, and tired of pretending that a temporary, glamorous life was better than an honest one. One Tuesday evening, after Daniel had canceled their dinner plans at the last minute with a vague text about an unexpected market crisis, Maya didn't sulk. She acted. She called a cab and went straight to the address listed on Daniel's exclusive business card, the address of the infamous penthouse. The building was a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of downtown. The lobby was all marble and polished steel, manned by a concierge who looked like he could be an intimidating bodyguard. Maya approached the desk, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "I'm here to see Daniel K," she said confidently, dropping the name like a heavy coin. "I'm Maya, his partner. He's expecting me." The concierge, a man named Clive, tapped on his keyboard, his face impassive. "Daniel K. I'm afraid he doesn't have any visitors registered for tonight." "Check again," Maya insisted, her voice tighter now. "He often forgets to tell you guys. It's the penthouse suite. He's probably wrapping up a call." Clive checked again, slower this time. He looked up, a flicker of something, maybe pity, in his eyes. "I'm sorry. Mr. K.'s apartment has been undergoing continuous, heavy renovation for several months. He has not resided here during that time." The word continuous hit Maya like a punch to the gut. It confirmed Lila's and Ethan's suspicions. The penthouse was a lie, or at least, a long-term unlivable construction zone. It was a perfect excuse to hide the truth. Maya didn't wait long. She called Daniel and demanded he meet her immediately in the lobby. He arrived 20 minutes later, frazzled and sweating slightly under his tailored suit. His usual smooth charm was completely gone, replaced by a panicked defensiveness. "Maya, what are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice low and sharp, pulling her aside into a quieter corner near a massive marble fountain. "I'm here to see the apartment, Daniel," she replied, her eyes steady. "I'm tired of the vague excuses. I want to see the Venetian plaster. Now." Daniel ran a hand through his neat hair. "This is highly inappropriate. I told you, the contractors are here right now. It's dusty, it's unsafe, and they are on a tight schedule." "The concierge said you haven't been here in months," Maya challenged, leaning in. "He said the renovation is continuous. Where are you actually living, Daniel?" His perfect mask snapped. The man who stood before her was not the charming host. He was a cornered animal. "You know what, Maya? You are being incredibly difficult right now," he hissed, his voice full of frustrated anger. "I told you to trust me. Who are you to question my life? I've given you everything. Can't you just accept a simple explanation without acting like a detective?" That was the crucial slip-up. He wasn't just annoyed. He was genuinely angry that she had challenged his control. He didn't defend his truth. He attacked her character. His anger was a far more telling red flag than any declined credit card. Maya stepped back, shocked by the venom in his voice. She mumbled an apology, immediately regretting pushing him. "I'm sorry, Daniel. You're right. I shouldn't have shown up unannounced." He calmed down instantly, forcing his charming smile back on. "Good. Let's go. I'll take you back to your place." Later that night, Daniel took her back to his current temporary residence, a luxurious, short-term rental suite that was beautiful but completely devoid of personality. Maya pretended to fall asleep, but her mind was racing. She had seen the real Daniel tonight, panicked, cruel, and controlling. Around 2 a.m., she heard him slip out of bed. She opened her eyes slightly and saw him in the dark living area, talking on his phone in a hushed, frantic whisper. It wasn't a business call. It was a plea. "I need that transfer tonight. They're going to tow the car tomorrow. I swear I can pay you back next week. Just give me another 24 hours, please. I can't have them take the car. It's all I have left." His voice was tight with desperation, strained with fear. This was not the smooth investor talking about leverage. This was a man begging for his life. And the most shocking part? He was worried about the car, the symbol of his wealth, the thing he used to pick her up. Maya closed her eyes tightly, her heart breaking not just from the lie, but from the terrifying realization of how deep this illusion went. He finished the call, and as he walked back to the bedroom, he must have sensed her eyes on him. "Everything okay?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but his voice was trembling slightly. "Just getting a drink of water," Maya whispered. Daniel quickly covered his lie. "That was just a major client. Late night, you know? They needed to discuss a bridge loan, huge numbers. I told him he needed to slow down. I'm not running a charity." He slipped back into the smooth, familiar lie. Maya knew absolutely and without a shred of doubt, that he was lying. But she didn't argue. She simply smiled a gentle, sleepy smile and said, "That sounds intense, honey. Everything will be fine." Maya turned onto her side, pretending to drift back to sleep. But her mind was fiercely awake. The shame and the regret were still there, but they were now overshadowed by a powerful, clear truth. Daniel was a fraud. He wasn't renovating a penthouse. He was desperately fighting off creditors. The extravagant life wasn't his. It was being borrowed, begged for, or rented. This was the moment of complete clarity. All the warnings, her mother's wisdom, Lila's intuition, Ethan's logic, snapped into focus. The humiliation she felt now was temporary, but the danger of staying was permanent. The beautiful fantasy was gone, but in its place, a fierce new resolve was born. Maya realized that by learning the truth, she had won back her own agency. She was no longer waiting. She was planning. This realization was her emotional victory, the single ray of light in the darkness. She was ready to take control of her life and walk away from the elaborate lie he had sold her. Daniel's facade has completely crumbled, and Maya is ready to act. But escaping a man who is this desperate won't be easy. We know Maya saw the truth. Daniel was broke, desperate, and lying. But here's the thing about pride and sunk costs. Even when you know the fire is coming, it's hard to drop the heavy bags you packed. So, in the rental suite, even though she knew her life with Daniel was a sham, Maya kept up the act. She had hundreds of followers now, all watching her fabulous, impossible life. She had to keep feeding them the dream. She made one last, bold post. It was a picture taken right before Daniel came back, looking defeated from his begging phone call. It was a close-up of her hand resting on the steering wheel of Daniel's beloved black sports car, which he was so worried about losing. She wore the diamond ring and her new sunglasses. The caption was short and smug. Just another Tuesday, running errands. She watched the likes pour in, the little hearts flashing on her screen, and for a minute, the high was back. That feeling of validation was like a drug, making the truth temporarily dissipate. The first sign of trouble wasn't a warning. It was an execution. The comment wasn't hidden or polite. It was dropped right into her feed, plain and devastating. A stranger's username, TruthSeeker416, left a simple line. "That car isn't his. It's a rental. I know the real owner." Maya stayed at the screen, her heart slamming against her ribs. She was sitting in the rental suite, waiting for the man who was begging for money on the phone. And now this. She reached out to delete the comment, but before she could, another one popped up. And then another. "LOL. He owes my cousin money for those suits he keeps wearing. Never paid the tailoring fee. I'm friends with the building manager at the penthouse address. That apartment is empty, gutted, and has been for a year. He's been selling a lie. I worked the catering for the rooftop party last week. He tried to tip us with a gift certificate. Total scam artist." The comments piled up like dirty laundry, stripping away the shimmering, expensive layers of Daniel's life one by one. Her beautiful, curated feed had turned into a public execution square. The secret she had worked so hard to ignore was now being shouted by strangers all over the internet. It was instantaneous, vicious, and utterly complete. The whole world, or at least the hundreds of people she desperately wanted to impress, now knew that Maya was dating a fake. She scrambled, fingers flying, trying to delete the comments, but they were too fast, too many. With a trembling hand, she deleted the entire post. Then, she frantically switched her whole account to private. The damage, though, was done. The humiliation was permanently online, witnessed by everyone. Maya threw the phone onto the plush, temporary sofa. She felt a wave of nausea so powerful it made her dizzy. She stumbled into the small, temporary bedroom and slammed the door shut, locking it with a sharp, final click. She collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in the pillows. The luxury of the suite, which she had found comforting just hours ago, now felt cold and mocking. It was all fake, and now she was exposed as the fool who believed it. The pain wasn't just about Daniel's deception. It was about the humiliation of the past few weeks. She thought of her mother, wise and steady, asking about love and respect. She thought of Lila, intuitively seeing the too perfect lie. And she thought of Ethan, the good, honest man she had destroyed with her pride, accusing him of jealousy because she didn't choose him. She hadn't just chosen the wrong man. She had chosen the wrong values. She had chosen superficial approval over genuine affection. She had chosen a glittering lie over the solid truth. Maya finally sat up, the air thick with shame. The tears came then, hot and messy, washing away the last remnants of her arrogance. I chose the wrong man, she whispered into the empty, silent room. I chose the wrong man. I was so wrong. The words weren't just an admission of a mistake. They were a confession of profound regret. The feeling was devastating, but it was also freeing. The weight of the lie she'd been carrying for Daniel, and the bigger lie she'd been selling to herself, lifted from her shoulders. She was stripped bare of her pride and her fantasy. It was the most honest moment she'd had in weeks. And in that raw, exposed honesty, something shifted. Her heartbreak wasn't just about the failed relationship. It was about the failure of her judgment. This moment of crushing, public humiliation became Maya's necessary turning point. By finally accepting the devastating truth that she had chased a phantom and hurt the people who truly loved her, she allowed herself to feel the profound regret she needed. This painful, honest admission was her first step back toward genuine love and self-respect. Her dream of luxury had collapsed, but her hope for a real, honest future was finally beginning to rise from the ashes of her pride. Maya is now completely alone, terrified, and has nowhere to go. She needs a place to hide and a person to help her pick up the pieces. The public collapse of Daniel's life on social media had stripped Maya of a last defense, pride. Now, sitting alone in the temporary rental suite, she had nothing left but the cold, hard facts. She couldn't pretend anymore. When Daniel finally returned late the next afternoon, looking tired and even more defeated, Maya was waiting for him. She didn't put on any of the jewelry he bought her. She wore a simple, familiar sweater. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking slightly, but steady. Daniel sighed, tossing his keys onto the counter with a dramatic flourish. "Can it wait, Maya? I've had an impossible day. These clients are driving me insane." "No," she insisted, standing up. "It can't wait. I saw the comments on social media. They're saying your car is a rental. They're saying your penthouse is gutted. They're saying you're fake." At first, Daniel did exactly what Maya expected. He laughed, a deep, booming, dismissive sound that was supposed to make her feel ridiculous for believing strangers. "Are you serious right now, Maya?" he scoffed, walking over to the minibar to pour himself a drink. "You're listening to anonymous internet trolls. People hate success. They hate anyone who drives a nice car or makes money. It's called jealousy. You should know that. I thought you were smarter than this." He tried to turn it back on her, wrapping the truth in a thick blanket of scorn. But Maya was done with the charm. The humiliation was too fresh, the fear too real. "I know the penthouse is empty, Daniel," she pressed, her voice rising now, giving him the one specific fact she knew she could trust. "The concierge at your building told me you haven't lived there in months because of the continuous renovation. And I heard you on the phone last night, begging someone for money so they wouldn't tow the car." She threw his own words back at him, forcing him to face the mirror. The charm evaporated instantly. His face went dark, and the easy smile vanished, replaced by a cold, frightening mask of anger. "You are listening to my calls," Daniel roared, slamming his glass down on the counter. The glass didn't break, but the noise was loud and violent. "You were spying on me. After everything I've done for you, I bought you clothes. I took you places. I pulled you out of that miserable little life, and this is the respect I get." His anger was a terrifying confirmation. He didn't deny the debt or the lie. He attacked her for discovering it. "You don't trust me," he spat, pointing a finger at her. "That's your problem, Maya. You're always looking for the catch. I gave you the world, and you chose to listen to some bitter hater on the internet instead of the man who loves you." "You don't love me, Daniel," Maya cried, tears finally springing to her eyes. "You don't even respect me. You've been lying to me. Everything is fake. The car, The house, the life, it's all borrowed, isn't it? Daniel just stayed at her, breathing heavily. He knew the fight was lost. He grabbed his keys from the counter. Fine, he snarled. If you don't trust me, then we don't have anything. I don't need this drama. I have real problems to deal with. Don't call me. He stormed out the door, the sharp slam echoing through the silent, temporary suite. He didn't look back. He didn't take her with him. He just left her alone, in the rented luxury, surrounded by the expensive, hollow promises of his broken world. Maya collapsed onto the sofa. Shaking, heartbroken, and completely defeated, she finally reached for the one number she knew wouldn't judge her first. Lila. He left. Lila. Maya choked out, the words catching in her throat. He just left. I confronted him and he just exploded and left. Lila didn't offer any empty platitudes. She was quiet for a moment on the other end, letting Maya cry. Then, she delivered the blunt, surgical truth. Listen to me, Maya. I am not going to sugarcoat this. Lila's voice was sharp but full of raw care. You need to stop being shocked and start being smart. That man is a fraud. You're living in a fantasy. He's not an investor. He's a hustler, and he's broke. The only reason he got angry is because you threatened his ability to use you to keep up the lie. He said he was leaving because I don't trust him, Maya whispered, still trying to grasp Daniel's twisted logic. Trust him. Lila's laugh was short and harsh. Girl, you're going to go down with him if you're not careful. He needed your attention and your admiration to fuel his ego while he begged for money. That's not love. That's manipulation. You need to gather your things, call your mom, and get out of that apartment tonight. Lila's tough love was exactly what Maya needed. It cut through the confusion and the shame, leaving her with a clear, urgent directive: survival. Maya ended the call with Lila, the receiver slipping from her sweaty grasp. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew, with sickening finality, that Lila was right. She was dating a liar, and the dream she had chased had turned into a nightmare. Daniel's parting shot, "Don't call me," was the final confirmation that she was disposable. But as the initial shock faded, something remarkable happened. She looked around the beautiful, empty suite and realized that she was finally free. The man who had controlled her life, her schedule, and her confidence was gone. His anger had broken the spell of his charm forever. The pain of the lie was real, but the knowledge that she had finally chosen to listen to truth, not flattery, was her liberation. The unwavering, honest love from Lila, her mother, and even Ethan, was the anchor that had stopped her from sinking. That love, not Daniel's money, was the real, solid wealth in her life, and Maya was finally ready to reach for it. The fantasy was over, but the hope for a genuine life was just beginning. Maya is alone, betrayed, and needs a place to go. After Daniel stormed out and left Maya alone in the rented apartment, Maya packed her bags. She didn't call her mother yet, and she hadn't called Ethan. She went to Lila's place for a few nights, sleeping on the couch, letting the blunt honesty of her friend finally sink in. She knew she had to get back to work. She couldn't stay on Lila's couch forever, wearing clothes Daniel had bought with borrowed money. She swallowed her pride and went back to the only world that was real, her own. She called her old manager at the Style Spot boutique and begged for her job back. The manager, bless her heart, gave her part-time hours to start. It was one quiet Tuesday afternoon, the store empty except for the hushed music, and Maya was meticulously folding silk shirts, a job she had once scorned, when her new, fragile piece was shattered. The front door chimed, and a man walked in. He wasn't browsing. He was dressed in an expensive, dark suit, but unlike Daniel, there was no flash, no charm. His face was sharp, his movements were efficient, and his eyes were cold and professional. He looked like an accountant who had lost his soul. He walked straight past the display racks and stopped right in front of Maya. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of authority. "Are you Maya, Daniel K.'s girlfriend?" Maya's stomach dropped like a stone. She felt the same sick fear she felt when Daniel's first credit card had been declined. I know Daniel," she stammered. The man didn't introduce himself. He simply reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a business card. It was thick, professional, and terrifying. The name was Victor Sterling, and below it, the title, Asset Recovery Specialist. Mr. K is proving very difficult to locate, Victor said, his tone utterly devoid of emotion. He is delinquent on several high-value accounts, and we've been directed to track down all known associates. He owes thousands of dollars to my clients, particularly on a few auto leases. Auto leases. The black sports car. The one Daniel was begging on the phone not to have towed. Maya just stared at the card, the gold lettering suddenly feeling hot and dirty in her hand. If you have any information regarding his current whereabouts, please contact me immediately, Victor finished, turning to leave. He paused at the door. He has a habit of leaving the cleanup to other people, Ms. Maya. I suggest you detach yourself quickly. He left as silently as he had arrived, leaving Maya standing there, trembling, holding the proof that the whole world she'd entered was nothing but a stack of bad debts. This is the moment when the lies become a threat to Maya's real life. That night, Maya found Daniel at the rental suite. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall. The smooth suit was wrinkled, and the confident air was completely gone. He looked small, pathetic, and scared. Maya didn't yell or cry. She walked over, placed Victor Sterling's debt collector card right on his knee, and simply said one word. Explain. Daniel didn't try to laugh it off this time. He didn't try to accuse her of jealousy or mistrust. He looked at the card, then up at Maya, and his carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. He broke down. Not the controlled, dramatic breakdown of a movie character, but the ugly, real sound of a man who has lost everything and knows is about to be exposed. He covered his face with his hands and wept. It's all true, Maya, he choked out, his voice muffled and raw. All of it. The car is leased, and they are repossessing it tomorrow. The dinners were charged on business credit cards I can't pay. The clothes were purchased on revolving credit. Even this suite, it's almost up. He lifted his head, his eyes red and full of a profound shame. The businesses, they are bankrupt. I'm ruined. I've been trying to fake it, Maya. I've been trying to act like I was still in the elite circle, hoping someone would throw me a lifeline. An investment. A rescue. I was trying to use the appearance of success to climb back up. Maya stared at him, her horror growing with every broken syllable. The penthouse, she asked, her voice flat. It was a trust fund asset, Daniel confessed. It was the only thing I had left, but I lost a claim on it months ago. It's tied up in a settlement. I used the renovation excuse so I wouldn't have to admit I was homeless. He looked at her, searching for the slightest trace of pity. I thought if I could just show you the life you wanted, that maybe you could help me, inspire me. I needed the beautiful distraction, Maya. His confession was complete. He hadn't loved her. He had needed her as an accessory to his lie, a validation of the person he pretended to be. Maya didn't stay long. She listened to the end of his broken confession, watching the handsome, charming man she had fallen for melt into a desperate, ruined stranger. The fear of the debt collector was real, but the disgust at Daniel's absolute lack of character was stronger. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to argue. She simply picked up her small, worn tote bag, the one she used before Daniel came along, and walked to the door. I need you to understand one thing, Daniel, Maya said, her voice completely calm, the sound of absolute finality. I didn't need a rescue. I didn't need a lifeline. I was working every single day to build my own successful life. I was the solid thing. You weren't trying to elevate me. You were trying to sink me. She looked at him one last time, seeing only a man consumed by lies. I'm choosing my own life, Daniel. I wish you well. And with that, she walked out, closing the door on the elaborate, expensive lie that had almost consumed her. The horror of the betrayal was immense, but the clarity was absolute. In that moment, walking away from the collapsed fantasy, Maya realized that her true value wasn't the reflection in Daniel's borrowed sports car window. It was the woman who had the strength to walk back into her modest job and face the truth. She chose the dignity of her own struggle over the shame of his scam. And in that definitive choice, she won back her self-respect, cementing the hope for a future that would be genuinely her own. Maya is now free, but she has a massive emotional debt to pay to the two men she hurt. The confrontation with Daniel had been ugly, but necessary. Now, Maya had to make it final. She asked him to meet her one last time, not in a fancy restaurant and not at the rental suite, but at a quiet corner of the city park, a neutral, open space where he couldn't trap her. Daniel showed up looking rough. His clothes were still expensive, but they hung on him poorly, like a costume that no longer fit the role. He looked terrified. "Maya, please, listen to me," he started, reaching for her hand. Maya pulled it away gently but firmly. "I know I messed up. I know I lied. But you're the one good thing in my life. You inspire me. You make me believe I can get back to where I was." He was still doing it, still using her as a tool for his own ego and survival. "I need your support, Maya," he begged, his voice cracking. "If you leave, I have nothing left. Please, I promise I'll change. We can start over, truly honest this time." Maya looked at him, and she saw not a lover, but a broken man clinging to a lifeline. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary resolution. "I can't, Daniel," she said, the word quiet but firm. "I can't be your lifeline, and I can't be your inspiration. I need to be my own lifeline right now." "But the future we talked about," he pleaded. "That future was a beautiful, expensive fantasy, Daniel," Maya interrupted. "It was never real, and I can't live a lie anymore. I can't live for a picture, a post, or a credit card that isn't yours." She took a deep breath. This was a moment she was taking back her power. "I need you to understand. I'm not just walking away from you. I'm walking away from the shame of how blind I've been. I have to find my way back to the truth, and I can't do that with you." She turned to leave, and Daniel made one final, desperate plea, his voice reduced to a broken whisper. "Maya, don't do this. You'll be back to your old life. The bus, the grind. Is that what you want?" That insult, that final moment of manipulation, only solidified her decision. "Yes," she answered without turning around. "I want the grind. Because the grind is real, and the grind is mine." Maya went straight back to her small, familiar apartment. She didn't go to Lila's. She needed to be alone for this. She needed to face the damage she had done to herself. She sat on her bed, the old, comfortable quilt pulled over her knees, and she picked up her phone. She opened a social media app and started scrolling through her posts from the last few weeks. The dinners at Le Fleur, the glamorous, 4 smiles next to the leased sports car, the close-ups of the expensive, fake jewelry. Every picture felt like a lie screaming from the screen. That was the woman she had become, a carefully staged performer living for the approval of strangers. The shame was a crushing weight. She saw a picture of her and Daniel, both looking perfect, both looking happy, and she remembered that the picture was taken 5 minutes after Daniel had snapped at her for asking too many questions. The smile in the photo was a mask hiding fear and doubt. She felt a wave of nausea. She had to erase it, not just for her followers, but for herself. She needed to purge the fake history. It was a quiet, almost sacred ritual. Post by post, picture by picture, she started deleting the life she had pretended to live. The dazzling photos vanished, replaced by the simple, plain background of her profile page. The shame wasn't leaving yet, but with every click, the shame was being shed, like old, dirty skin. When she was done, the screen was almost blank. The only things left were a few blurry, old photos of her and her mother, and a picture of her college diploma. Real things. Earned things. Maya lay back on her quilt and closed her eyes. The room was silent, honest, and completely hers. There was no more waiting for a man to call, no more pressure to dress up, and no more fear of public exposure. The shame of her blindness was still there, a heavy echo. But overwhelming that echo was a huge, wave-like surge of relief. She was free. She had chosen self-respect over pretense, and that choice felt more luxurious than any car or diamond. She knew she had a long road ahead. She had to apologize to the people she hurt. She had to rebuild her career, and she had to learn to trust her own judgment again. But the worst was over. She had walked away from the ruin, and she had purged the lie. That night, alone in her quiet room, Maya didn't feel devastated. She felt victorious. She was no longer running from the truth. The tears she shed were tears of release, washing away the fake life and making room for a future that would be built on solid, honest ground. She had hit her breaking point, and in breaking, she had finally found the strength to save herself, embracing the quiet, profound hope of a genuine new beginning. Maya is finally free, but she owes a massive apology. The painful confrontation with Daniel had been the final step out of the fantasy, but Maya still had one major thing left to do: swallow her pride and apologize to the people she had hurt. She started with Lila. She didn't call. She showed up at Lila's apartment with a small coffee. "I need to say something," Maya began, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I was a fool, Lila. I ignored you because I thought I was smarter than you. And I'm sorry. You were right about everything." Lila didn't hug her right away. She looked at Maya with a steady, kind gaze. "Come in, girl," Lila said, pulling her inside. "We don't need to count how many times you were wrong, Maya. I just needed you to be safe." They sat down on the sofa, and Maya just let the truth pour out. The fee, the debt collector, the shame of the social media explosion. Lila listened to the whole awful story. "I tried to tell you," Lila said softly, "but you had to see it for yourself. Look, I love you, but you traded your good sense for a shiny photo op, and that comes with a cost. You pushed me away, and you pushed Ethan away, because we were telling you the truth. Don't ever let a man's wallet make you doubt your own intuition again." Lila's love was tough and firm. She hugged Maya then, holding her tight, and the feeling of that honest, unbroken friendship was the first solid thing Maya had touched in months. It felt like coming home. The next apology was harder. Facing Auntie Carol meant facing the disappointment of the person whose sacrifice Maya had been trying to escape. Maya went to her mother's house and simply hugged her, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she wept. "You were right. All you cared about was if he respected me, and he didn't even respect himself." Auntie Carol held her daughter tight, not letting go until Maya's sobs quieted. "Oh, baby," her mother murmured, stroking her hair. "I knew you'd figure it out. My job isn't to be right. My job is to be here when you need a landing spot." They sat down at the kitchen table, and Auntie Carol looked at her with soft, loving eyes. "We forgive you, honey," she said, nodding. "But remember this feeling. Actions have consequences. That man almost cost you your future. You let pride blind you to real love. Don't waste this lesson. You have a clean slate, but you have to keep it clean with honesty and humility." The humility stung, but it was a necessary sting. Maya wasn't treated like a child, but like a grown woman who had made a major mistake and was now strong enough to accept the accountability. The feeling of being wrapped in her family's unconditional love was a profound healing balm. She realized that Daniel's world offered expensive, temporary fixes. Her family offered free, permanent security. With her emotional debts settled, Maya turned her focus to the only thing left: herself. She was back at the style spot full-time now, folding those silk scarves and running sales reports. But the job was different. Before Daniel, the boutique job felt like a trap. Now, it felt like a foundation. She was earning her own money again. She opened a savings account, small at first, but completely hers. She started paying her own rent, her own bills, on time, without drama, without begging, and without borrowed money. Maya started surprising herself with the simple joy she found in her independence. She realized that she had power every time she clocked in, every time she made a sale, and every time she balanced her budget. The excitement she used to find in Daniel's surprises had been replaced by the quiet, deep satisfaction of control. One day, while meticulously arranging a new jewelry display, she had a moment of pure clarity. She wasn't chasing a fantasy anymore. She was pursuing a plan. She was back to saving for school, back to her original goal of owning her own business. The money was slower, the climb was harder, but the ground beneath her feet was solid. Maya's skin started to glow again. Her posture straightened. She no longer had to put on a show for the internet or pretend to be someone she wasn't. She was simply Maya, ambitious, smart, and a little bruised, but moving forward. The humiliation she had faced, the shame of being so wrong, had been a painful but necessary fire. It burned away the toxic desire for quick wealth and left her with a profound appreciation for the sturdy, genuine life she already had. She was working hard, reconnecting with the people who mattered, and making decisions that served her future, not her pride. The small paycheck was worth more than Daniel's entire facade, because it was clean, honest, and truly hers. The humility was the key that unlocked her true strength. Maya realized the luxury wasn't in the penthouse or the car. It was in the freedom to make her own mistakes and the security of having loved ones to help her up. With every day she worked and every honest penny she saved, Maya felt the profound peace of a clean slate, finding a quiet, deep joy in her independence that was more valuable and heartwarming than any diamond Daniel could have bought her. Maya had successfully rebuilt her foundation. She had her job back, her family's love was restored, and she was saving money again. But there was a massive emotional debt she still hadn't paid, a wound she had inflicted that needed healing, her friendship with Ethan. After days of agonizing, she finally sent him a text. It was short, simple, and honest. "Can we talk? I owe you a massive apology." Ethan replied almost immediately, not with the enthusiasm of a lover, but with the measured calm of a truly good friend. "Of course. Name the time and place." Maya chose a quiet coffee shop on the edge of their old neighborhood, a place that felt familiar and safe. She arrived 10 minutes early, her stomach churning with nervous anticipation and heavy shame. When Ethan walked in, she saw immediately that he was no longer the man she had cruelly dismissed. He had definitely had a glow-up, but it wasn't just the clothes or the new car keys he tucked into his pocket. It was the air around him. He walked with a solid, grounded confidence. He looked healthy, focused, and utterly secure in who he was. He was the picture of a man who had chosen to bet on himself and won. Maya felt her face flush with shame. The memory of her venomous words, "You're just bitter because I didn't choose you," burned in her mind. She realized her pride had not just blinded her. It had made her cruel to the most decent person she knew. Ethan pulled up a chair across from her, his gaze steady and kind, but not overly warm. There was a distance there. The wound was still visible. "Thanks for meeting me, Maya," he said, his voice deep and calm. Maya couldn't look at the confidence in his eyes. She looked down at her hands, twisting the paper napkin. "I need to say this right," she began, taking a shaky breath. "I was horrible to you, Ethan. When you tried to warn me, I didn't just ignore you. I lashed out and said something truly cruel. I used your honesty and your love for me against you, and there is no excuse for that. I'm so sorry. From the bottom of my heart. I was blind." She waited for the anger, the "I told you so," the triumphant recitation of her mistakes. But none of that came. Ethan just listened, quietly, letting her humiliation settle. When she was finished, he reached across the table and placed his hand, warm and strong, over the paper napkin she was tearing apart. "I accept your apology, Maya," he said simply. "I know you were hurting and scared, and you tried to hide it with arrogance. It still hurt like hell. Those words, they were the hardest I've ever heard from you. I won't pretend the wound isn't still there." He was honest without being mean. He didn't rub his own success in her face, though he easily could have. He was just being Ethan, real, measured, and kind. "But I always knew your heart, Maya," he continued, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I knew the girl who was smart and worked hard. I knew that fake life couldn't hold you forever." Maya looked up, her eyes blurring with tears. "I chose the fake life over you," she confessed, the regret heavy in her voice. "I chose a borrowed lie over genuine care. And I'm so sorry." "I know," Ethan murmured. "And I know why. You were tired of the struggle. That's understandable. You just picked the wrong way out." The tension finally broke. They spent the next hour talking, not about Daniel's betrayal, but about Maya's work, Ethan's promotion, and her plans to go back to school. It was easy, comfortable conversation, the way it used to be. The weight in Maya's chest began to lift, replaced by a profound, gentle warmth. As they stood to leave, Maya looked at Ethan. He was a one who was truly rich, rich in character, rich in work ethic, rich in patience and forgiveness. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her voice sincere. "Thank you for not making me pay for my mistake." Ethan smiled, a real, full smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You already paid, Maya. You paid the price of the lesson. Now it's time to cash in on the knowledge." He walked her to the street corner, and Maya realized that the silence between them was no longer awkward or strained. It was comfortable, charged with a profound, healed connection. His kindness hadn't just soothed her shame. It had stirred something deeper inside her, a reminder of what genuine care and authentic love truly felt like, a quiet warmth that eclipsed the fleeting excitement of any borrowed sports car. The healing was complete, and the possibility of a true, honest future was finally on the table. Ethan's forgiving heart and quiet strength served as a powerful testament that real value shines through, proving that the foundation of true love and friendship is far more valuable and heartwarming than any superficial wealth. The shame was gone, replaced by a budding hope for a future built on truth. Maya had found her rhythm. She was up early, commuting to the boutique, and hitting the library at night to study for the business courses she planned to take. The stress of chasing a life that wasn't hers had melted away, replaced by the satisfying exhaustion of building a life that was. She walked confidently through her old neighborhood. No driver-driven black car, no high-heeled anxiety. She wore comfortable, simple clothes and carried a practical tote bag. Her hands were free of borrowed jewelry, and her eyes were clear. She had found a quiet, profound peace that Daniel's entire fortune couldn't buy. She was simply herself, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. She thought about that feeling, the relief of not having to pretend. It was the best form of freedom. This Saturday afternoon, she was meeting Ethan for coffee. This wasn't a date yet. It was a continuation of the healing and the friendship they were carefully rebuilding. Maya spotted him sitting at a small table near the window. He stood up when she walked over, his eyes holding that familiar, genuine warmth. He didn't compliment her dress or her hair. He just smiled. "You look great, Maya," he said, and she knew he meant healthy and happy, not expensive. "So do you, site manager," she replied, a genuine smile reaching her eyes. Their conversation was easy, focused on the real things, work schedules, family updates, and Maya's plans for school. There were no vague boasts about leverage or international deals, just the solid, dependable details of two people building their lives brick by honest brick. As they talked, Maya felt the old, comfortable connection settle around them. It wasn't the dizzying, high-pressure dazzle that Daniel brought. It was a slow, steady spark, the spark of mutual respect, shared history, and authentic care. She realized the massive difference between the two. Daniel's dazzling was meant to blind her, to stop her from looking too closely at the facts. Ethan's spark was meant to light her way forward, built on clear sight and honesty. He didn't need a grand gesture to be impressive. His integrity was his wealth, and his kindness was his charisma. That was a lesson worth more than any designer handbag. The coffee shop buzz faded, and Maya drifted into a profound final reflection. She thought back to that initial moment of attraction, the excitement of Daniel's business card, and her desperation to escape her life. She had thought she was making a smart move, that she was choosing a rich boyfriend. But that wasn't what happened at all. She hadn't chosen a boyfriend. She had chosen a lesson. The humiliation, the public shame, the pain of hurting her friends, it had all been a consequence of that choice. It had been painful, ugly, and almost destroyed her. But it was also the crucible that burned away her toxic pride and forced her to confront her own misguided values. She had to lose everything she thought she wanted to find out what she truly needed. She needed to learn that the stability she craved wasn't something a man could give her. It was something she had to build within herself. The confidence she desired couldn't come from expensive clothes. It had to come from earned success. The lesson had set her free. Free from the shame of her past. Free from the pressure of external validation. And free to appreciate the genuine, quiet beauty of the world she had previously scorned. The conversation with Ethan lulled. He was looking at her with a gentle, hopeful expression, and Maya knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the slow, deliberate beginning of the next, best chapter. This time, there was no rush, no pressure, only the steady promise of two people building something real together, day by patient day. Maya smiled, a deep, genuine smile of pure self-acceptance. She reached across the table, not for a kiss or a promise, but simply to return the genuine warmth of his touch. The grand life she had chased had been a borrowed lie, but the genuine life she was building was an everlasting truth. She had been heartbroken, humiliated, and ashamed, but she had survived. And in surviving, she had realized that she was the real success story. Maya stood up, her step confident and light, carrying no designer bag and needing no flashy car, because she finally understood that her own worth, her own ambition, and the genuine love of the people she cherished were the only riches she would ever need. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story.